I never meant to fall for the Carpenter. But there's something about watching someone work with their hands, completely absorbed in the craft, that made it impossible not to notice him. His name was Thaddeus, though he went by Thad, and I met him the week I finally decided to do something about the chaos in my apartment. Books everywhere. Stacks on the floor, piles on the kitchen counter, paperbacks wedged between couch cushions. I'd been living like this for 2 years, telling myself I liked the organized chaos, but the truth was I just didn't know how to fix it. My friend Maya recommended him. She said he'd built custom shelving for her sister, and that he was meticulous, reliable, and surprisingly affordable. What she didn't mention was that he had these incredibly gentle brown eyes and hands that looked strong enough to tear a phone book in half, but moved with the precision of a surgeon. I noticed that the first time he came to look at the space. It was a Tuesday morning. I'd taken the day off work specifically for this consultation, and I'd cleaned my apartment more thoroughly than I had in months, which felt ridiculous because he was coming to see the mess. But I wanted to make a good impression. I told myself it was professional courtesy. Looking back, I think some part of me already knew. He knocked exactly on time. When I opened the door, he was standing there with a worn leather messenger bag over one shoulder and a measuring tape clipped to his belt. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans with actual sawdust on them, and when he smiled, it was this warm, genuine thing that made my stomach do something it hadn't done in a long time. We shook hands. His grip was firm but not aggressive, and I noticed he had a small scar across his left knuckle. I wondered about it immediately, invented 3 different stories for how he got it before he even stepped inside my apartment. He walked through the space slowly, not saying much at first, just looking. He picked up one of my books from a stack, turned it over in his hands, read the back cover. It was a collection of poetry by Ocean Vuong. He nodded slightly, set it down carefully, and moved to the next pile. I watched him take in the dimensions of the room, the natural light from the windows, the way the afternoon sun hit the far wall. Finally, he turned to me and said, "You're a reader." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I have a problem with buying books faster than I can read them. "That's not a problem," he said. "That's optimism. You're buying them for the person you'll be when you have time to read them." He pulled out a small notebook, started sketching. "I'm thinking floor to ceiling along this wall. Maybe a ladder system if you want to go full library aesthetic. And here," he pointed to the corner near the window, "built-in window seat with storage underneath. You could read there." The way he said it, like he'd already imagined me there with a book and afternoon light, made something in my chest tighten. I nodded, not trusting my voice for a second. We talked about wood types and finishes. He showed me photos of previous projects on his phone, and I noticed his lock screen was a picture of a golden retriever. I asked about the dog. He told me about Biscuit, his 8-year-old rescue who had 3 legs and an attitude problem. The way his whole face softened when he talked about that dog should have been my first warning that I was in trouble. He gave me a quote that was more than fair and said he could start the following week. We shook hands again at the door, and after he left, I stood there for a full minute with my hand tingling from where his skin had touched mine, wondering what the hell was happening to me. I'd dated before. A few women in college, one semi-serious relationship that ended when she moved to Seattle for work. I'd never really questioned it, but I'd also never felt this immediate, visceral pull toward anyone. It was like every nerve ending in my body woke up when Thad walked into the room. The week before he started, I thought about him constantly. I told myself I was just excited about the shelves, about finally organizing my space, but I knew I was lying. I kept replaying the conversation, the way he'd looked at my books with genuine interest, how he'd said that thing about optimism like he understood something essential about me from one apartment visit. When he arrived to start the work, he brought coffee. 2 cups from the place 3 blocks over that made the best cold brew in the city. "You mentioned you liked their coffee when I was here last week," he said, handing me one. Figured we'd both need caffeine for this. I didn't remember mentioning the coffee place, but apparently I had, and he'd remembered, and now we were standing in my living room at 8 in the morning, drinking cold brew together like this was normal, like my heart wasn't trying to beat its way out of my chest. He worked steadily for hours. I'd taken the week off, told my boss I was dealing with home renovations, which was true, but also felt like an excuse to be near Thad. I tried to work on my laptop at the kitchen table, but I kept watching him. The way he measured twice, cut once. How he'd stop occasionally, tilt his head, look at the wood from different angles before making a decision. The concentration on his face when he was fitting pieces together. Around noon, I offered to make lunch. He accepted, and we ate sandwiches sitting on my floor because my small table was covered in his tools. We talked about normal things. He asked what I did for work. I told him about my job in marketing, how it paid the bills but didn't particularly inspire me. He told me about learning carpentry from his grandfather, how he'd been pre-med in college but realized halfway through that he was trying to fulfill someone else's dream. My parents weren't thrilled, he said, picking at the crust of his bread. But my grandfather got it. He told me that working with your hands, creating something tangible and useful, that was its own kind of healing. Is that why you do it? I asked. The healing part? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt seen in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Partly, he said. But mostly I just like making things that matter to people. Like, these shelves aren't just shelves. They're going to hold all these stories you love. Every time you look at them, you'll remember the books, but also this moment, you know, the before and after. I wanted to tell him that I'd remember him, not just the moment, that he was already becoming part of the story of this apartment, my life. But I just nodded and took another bite of my sandwich. The work took 5 days. He showed up every morning with coffee, stayed until early evening. We fell into a rhythm. I'd work on my laptop, he'd work on the shelves, and we'd take breaks together. We talked about everything: music, movies, the neighborhood, his dog, my terrible habit of starting books and abandoning them halfway through. He told me about growing up in Vermont, how he missed the mountains but loved the energy of the city. I told him about my family, how I was the youngest of 4 and always felt like I was trying to catch up. On the 3rd day, our hands touched, reaching for the same measuring tape. It was brief, accidental, but I felt it everywhere. He pulled back quickly, apologized even though there was nothing to apologize for, and I saw something in his expression, uncertainty maybe, or recognition. Like he felt it too, but didn't know what to do with it. That night I lay in bed unable to sleep, replaying that moment over and over. The warmth of his hand, the way his breath had caught slightly, how we'd both pretended nothing happened. I'd never been so aware of another person's presence. Every time he moved in the apartment, I knew exactly where he was. It was like my body had developed its own Thad radar. By the 5th day, the shelves were nearly done. They were beautiful, even better than I'd imagined. Rich walnut wood with clean lines and perfect joints. He'd added small touches I hadn't asked for, a slight lip on each shelf to keep books from sliding off, rounded corners so nothing felt sharp or industrial. He'd built them like he was building them for someone he cared about. There's one more thing, he said that afternoon. He was kneeling by the window seat, making some final adjustments. Come here. I walked over, and he showed me a small drawer built into the side of the window seat, completely flush with the wood. You couldn't see it unless you knew it was there. He pressed a specific spot, and it popped open. A hidden compartment, he said, for whatever you want to keep private. Letters, journals, whatever. Why? I asked. He stood up, brushed sawdust off his jeans. We were standing closer than we'd been all week. Everyone needs a place for the things they're not ready to share yet, he said quietly. The air between us felt charged, heavy with everything we weren't saying. I could smell sawdust and his soap, something clean and cedar-scented. I wanted to close the distance between us, wanted it so badly my hands were shaking. "Thad," I started, but I didn't know how to finish. He looked at me with those gentle brown eyes, and I saw it clearly then. He felt it too, all of it. The pull, the awareness, the wanting. But he stepped back, created distance, and started packing up his tools. "I'll come back tomorrow morning to do the final touches," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Should be done by noon." He left quickly, and I stood there in my apartment, surrounded by beautiful new shelves and the ghost of a moment that didn't happen, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. That night I couldn't stop thinking about the hidden drawer, about what he'd said. Things we're not ready to share yet. Was he talking about himself? About me? About us? I got up at 2 a.m. and opened the drawer. It was empty, perfectly smooth on the inside. But when I ran my hand along the bottom, I felt something. A small piece of paper, folded once. My heart hammered as I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a phone number, his phone number, and below it, in careful handwriting, "In case you ever want to talk about the things in the hidden drawer. No pressure, just possibility. Thad." I sat on the floor of my apartment, holding this piece of paper, and something in me just cracked open. He'd left me a door to walk through, a choice to make. He wasn't pushing, wasn't assuming, just offering, just saying, "I see you, and if you see me too, here's how you find me." I texted him at 2:15 in the morning. Couldn't help myself. Just, I found it. 3 dots appeared immediately, like he'd been awake too, waiting. And, my hands were shaking as I typed, "I want to talk about all of it, everything, the things I'm not ready to share and the things I didn't know I was feeling until you walked into my apartment and started building shelves." The dots appeared and disappeared 3 times, finally. "I'm glad. I've been hoping you'd find it. Wasn't sure you would." How long was I supposed to look? However long it took. Could have been days. Could have been never. I was prepared for never. I smiled at my phone screen, felt tears on my cheeks that I didn't remember starting to cry. "Can I call you?" "Please." His voice when he answered was soft, a little rough, like maybe he'd been emotional too. "Hey. Hey," I said back. "I don't really know how to do this." "Do what?" "Any of it. This. You. I haven't really. With a guy, I was stumbling over words, making a mess of it. "We don't have to figure it all out tonight," Thad said gently. "We can just talk. Just be honest. That's all I want. Honesty." So I was honest. I told him about watching him work, about the hand touch with the measuring tape, about lying awake every night that week thinking about him. I told him I'd never felt this way about anyone, that it scared me and excited me in equal measure. I told him I didn't have all the answers about who I was or what this meant, but I knew I wanted to find out. He listened to all of it, and then he told me his side. How he'd known from the moment he saw my Ocean Vuong book that this job was going to be different. How he'd started bringing coffee because it gave him an excuse to see my smile first thing in the morning. How he'd added days to the project, worked slower than he needed to because he didn't want it to end. How he'd built the hidden drawer on the 4th night, sat in his own apartment writing and rewriting that note a dozen times before he got it right. "I didn't want to assume," he said. "Didn't want to make you uncomfortable. But I also couldn't just walk away without giving you the option, without letting you know that if you felt even a fraction of what I was feeling, I wanted to explore it." We talked until 4 in the morning, about everything and nothing. About his last relationship that ended 2 years ago with a guy who wanted him to be less himself. About my confusion and clarity, how both could exist simultaneously. About taking things slow, about being patient with the process of figuring it out. When we finally said goodnight, he asked if he could still come over in the morning to finish the shelves. I said yes, but also, could we maybe get breakfast after? Real breakfast, not just coffee. Like a date. I'd really like that, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. He arrived the next morning with coffee and croissants from the French bakery on 5th. We ate them sitting on my new window seat, and when he reached over to brush a flake of pastry from my lip, I didn't pull away. I leaned into it, into him, into this new territory I was mapping for the first time. He finished the shelves. They were perfect. We spent an hour organizing my books together, and he made fun of my completely arbitrary system that was part alphabetical, part color-coded, part vibes-based. I threatened to leave a bad review, and he said he'd take his chances. We went to breakfast, a diner 2 neighborhoods over where they made thick-cut bacon and the coffee was terrible, but the company made up for it. We held hands across the table, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Like my hand had been waiting for his hand specifically. That was 8 months ago. The shelves are still perfect. I filled them with more books, including several that Thad has bought me, slipping them onto the shelves when he thinks I'm not looking. He has a key to my apartment now. Biscuit has decided that my couch is his couch. There are 2 toothbrushes in my bathroom and his carpentry tools mixed with my kitchen utensils in ways that would horrify both of us if we cared about organization. I still find things in the hidden drawer. He leaves notes there sometimes, little messages for me to find. Thinking about you. Proud of you for that presentation. You forgot to eat lunch again. There's pasta in the fridge. Once, I found a small carved wooden heart, smooth and perfect, that fit in the palm of my hand. I keep it in my pocket most days. Last week I left something in the drawer for him. A key to my apartment that I'd had made, even though he already had one. But this one had a small tag attached that said, in case you want to stop visiting and start staying. He found it yesterday. Texted me at work with just a heart emoji. When I got home, he was there, cooking dinner in my kitchen, our kitchen, and Biscuit was asleep on the couch, and it felt like everything I didn't know I'd been building toward my entire life. So, I said, dropping my bag by the door. What do you think? He turned from the stove, smiled that smile that still makes my stomach flip. I think I should have built those shelves sooner. I walked over, wrapped my arms around him from behind, felt him relax into me. The timing was perfect, I said. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. And I believed it. Still believe it. Sometimes the best things in life are hidden, waiting to be discovered. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to open the drawer, read the note, make the call. Sometimes love builds itself slowly, carefully, like a carpenter measuring twice and cutting once, making sure every joint is perfect, every corner smooth. Sometimes it starts with a bookshelf and becomes everything,